Hi, and welcome back to Unmasking the Trans Movement with John Euler. I'm your host, Brad Wilder. Today on the show, Paul Dohse is back along with John to discuss, well, one of the disturbing issues of the trans movement, which this actually is connected to the trans movement in a way that you probably aren't thinking of. We covered that in part one and discussed how this furry cult-like movement is actually, well, almost the start of some of this trans movement, ideology, dialogue, and participation. With us, obviously, is John Euler. He's our expert. He's got everything in the know about this particular topic, and he brings with him some credible experience as well from Paul Dohse. Great to have you back on the show, John, and last episode was pretty compelling. There was a lot of information to cover, and I don't think we're going to get done it in even 2 episodes.
Brad, we'll try to move quickly. Again, this topic, somebody may have come across the title about furries. What is furries? I recommend, again, go back, listen to part one. I had not heard of furries until working with a really heinous pedophile as I was on psychology staff for the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections. That's when I first heard about furries, and they indicated to me not just the one, but since then. So I've been a sex offender treatment provider, along with doing regular kind of counseling. But over the years, from quite a few pedophiles, how useful, how strategically beneficial, how tactical furries are, along with Drag Queen Story Hour, by the way, because what they said is this: it's amazing how parents are on guard, how they are mindful until a man dresses up or dresses down. He can wear a trench coat and mothers will call the police. But if he dresses in drag, if he dresses up in a costume, or if he puts on a female swimsuit and says he now wants to be part of this girls' swim team, suddenly women will no longer tune into their intuition, but it's, I think I'm dealing with a sensitive man. So this is a tactic. This is a method by which pedophiles are gaining access to kids. Now, they do so in churches. They will go anywhere. And that's, first of all, why we're concerned about the trans movement, because it really dumbs people down into thinking that every adult that is involved in this, that is pushing this movement, has kids' best interest in mind. But it is a magnet for predators because they know that people are dumbing down their intuition, and the kids have a hard time with their own intuition. So furries are big mascot-like costumes that you see in Disneyland or sporting events where 100% of the person's identity is covered up. You have no clue who you're dealing with. And strangely enough, deep down inside, we all tend to think that there's a line beyond which a pedophile wouldn't cross. And we say, well, that's not true. But we kind of think, well, okay, it's horrible, it's heinous, but no self-respecting pedophile would stoop so low as to do that. And that's why we don't want to be jaded, but we're no longer even suspicious. So you have this convention, one's happening in Pittsburgh again, where, as we said last time, nearly 10,000 rooms were booked within a 24-hour period of time. I don't know any other venue, even the Super Bowl, that will sell out rooms, that many rooms, in 24 hours. There's something going on with this. And as Paul Dohse, who has written the book, I was privileged to write the foreword to his fake fandom, the Furrie Fan Sect. So we strongly recommend people get a hold of this, because he does a deep dive as a researcher into what this is all about. And Brad, you read a fair bit as far as the description of this. Paul, welcome back. We're doing a deep dive into what I consider, what you consider, those of us that have had our eyes opened. This is a very, very dangerous movement, and we recommend that that no parent involve their child. What adults want to do with adults, that's fine. 10,000 rooms, they can all do their deviant stuff because it's been revealed. But this is not safe for kids.
Right. And So I have received some phone calls I shared in the first part about crinkling. And so I've received uh, one email from Texas where the guy was like, "Oh, I hear you have some information on furries. We're trying to figure out what's going on here." The school has actually capitulated to this movement amongst children, and they are putting pee pads down in the corners of the boys' bathrooms to where the children, whether boys or girls, are not using the toilets. They're peeing on these pads in the corner. And then I got another same kind of call from our area in the Dayton, Ohio area, where a fellow nurse called me. And the same thing was going on with some of her friends' children. And she's like, "What in the world is going on here?" So I sent them both my book. And again, like I mentioned in the first part, um, we can talk about the percentages, what percentage of the furry movement does what, but there are so many deviant behaviors and anti-cultural behaviors and behaviors beyond the cultural norm involved in this movement, that even if 1% of the movement's only participating in a particular uh, behavior, well, it's not the whole pie. It's two or three more pies. Okay, um, so it's a problem, and like I say in the book, the emphasis I make in the book, there's no upside at all to letting children anywhere near this movement. What I emphasize in the book, I try to make the case in the book that children need to be kept away from this movement at all costs.
That's right. And
especially adolescents, by the way, and particularly special needs children. Now, in regard to special needs children, of course, a lot of those have a tendency to look for acceptance. All right. And here's the problem with this movement that I get into more in the beginning of the book. So here's what you get into. It's a counterculture movement. It's a movement that seeks to invalidate and throw away all cultural norms. So you get a particularly strong draw into this movement is special needs children, because the movement has this front where it's all accepting, right? All accepting. We love everybody. Look at us, how silly we are. Everything goes. We love and accept everyone. Well, that is not the case at all. Inside the movement amongst furries, the relationships are extremely toxic. Okay, why is that? Well, when you throw out all the rules, when you throw out all the cultural norms, what fills the vacuum? What becomes law? Personal preference.
Yeah.
What individuals perceive as fair, right? So you throw out a handful of cultural norms concerning how normal people act intuitively. Now, what do you have? You've got this massive helter-skelter free-for-all law that it indicts everybody, right? And that's what happens within this movement. It was very much like happens in the 60s communes movement. The big draw to the 60s commune communities was, hey, no rules, let it all hang out, do what you feel. um you know you can sleep with whoever you want to. I read up on it a little bit. They had a schedule where you got to sleep with everybody else's wives and this, that, and the other. Well, why did those communities eventually break up? Well, they grew their own food. So even though there were no written laws, guess what happened? Preferences, preferences and fairness, individual perception of fairness became law. And now you got a law that is 100,000 pages long and no court to settle the issues. So you got this toxic environment. So you would have people who would start saying, well, I do more work in the garden every summer than Mary, and that's not fair. And then you get this contention. And, Bill gets to sleep with Mary 3 times a week, and I only get to sleep with Mary 1 time a week. And it just goes from there. So this is what you have in the furry fandom movement. The interrelationships within the movement are extremely toxic, and special needs children who get drawn into this movement eventually get destroyed emotionally.
And Paul, what I'm going to do is, as we continue to talk, now we want to be able to help parents understand, why are we so concerned? You just described about dynamics of adults that are very self-centered, very narcissistic, very, how should we put it, developmentally stuck. So this is what you're going to find at best. So adults playing dress up that invest thousands of dollars in these costumes, then on top of it go to these conventions, and the anonymity breeds sexual deviance. So all under the guise of these big costumes. Now, what you'll find is there's a convergence of, and you see it online, and you just referenced about special needs kids. That's a significant portion of those kids that are being sucked into, groomed into right. The trans movement, also sexual abuse victims. And I want to show people now where you start to have a convergence of things. So you have online, I was posting about the concerns of this. Right? Most parents have never heard of furries, so you certainly hadn't until conducting sex offender treatment in prison. That's where pedophiles started to educate me about how how grooming works. Furries is a grooming method they love. Predators embedded in it. Now, again, did I say every single adult involved in furries is a pedophile? No. But predators embedded in it. So they use it as a means of what? Accessing kids, and they view it as it's a perfect opportunity. Look at who commented. So we have somebody by the name of Bones. Now, Bones was this was the first time I'd ever seen this person online comment. And what does Bones say? Well, John, what's wrong with furries? Okay. So that that caused me to begin to look into who else do we have as a part of furries? Well, online, little by little, what you start to see is there's a convergence of not just people that dress as animals, but those that are into art, and they will start to draw, and they then go online, and parents, this is important. They will communicate with one another, and before you know it, you have drawings that have combined in it furries and what's called anime.
Right.
And look at even down, there we go, the description. Bunny girls are also hot. Okay. This is very common. Parents, if you see somebody online now, first of all, who owns this site? Whose Twitter page is this? You don't know, because they've hidden their identity. That's a number one red flag indicator. If you're online and somebody starts to interact with you, especially if they're going to try to defend furries, they should fully identify themselves. If somebody wants to look up my page, right, they'll see me and everything I do. I am fully up front. But it's very interesting that those that get into deviance, especially men, will hide their identity. And little by little, you're going to start to see this merging of very deviant art with hypersexualized stuff. But look at the age of the face.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
The age starts to look younger, but what happens with the body parts? They start to become over-exaggerated, hypersexualized. This is still considered anime. Hentai porn is highly deviant, and we're not even going to show the audience what hentai porn is. We'll just stay with minor stuff. I'm going to bring up another one. This is what your kids will find online if they start to involve themselves in furries, because it's art, they call it. And then lo and behold, what are they going to start to see? They're going to, now, first of all, let me ask you this. What kind of adult, how long do you think this took to draw? I'm not much of an artist, but that had to take days. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the theme? Okay. I think it's safe to say just a little bit sexualized.
Well, it's BDSM, right?
Okay. We got BDSM stuff. Now the question is this. Look at over top right. Do you see a little face, a little head up there? And look at the girls is straight ahead. What do they have? They have animal characteristics. You have this converging of anthropomorphism. Now, if you're a man, how much time did you spend drawing breasts? You're now suddenly very fixated. This is a deviant individual. That came out of a guy's mind. Now, do you want that kind of guy around your child?
So and this if you can put that picture up again, I'd like to point something else out.
Now, again, parents, stay with us because it's going to get worse, but you need to know this is mild. Parents, this is mild. This is pornography. So, you put this in front of a young kid. As a matter of fact, if these were adults, this would be pornography, and the person that put this in front of a child would be arrested. But because it's drawings, they can get away with it. Paul, what you were saying?
So the it'll be looking at the screen, the more prominent girl in the right front by where our videos are. What's with the big knife in her right hand? What's that all about?
I don't even. Oh, Paul, until you brought that. Yeah, sorry, I didn't even notice.
Yeah,
wow.
I mean, so we got a little bit of everything in this.
Yeah,
picture,
we do. Okay, right? I'm going to get out of this because this can trigger some people. I didn't even. Isn't that funny? I guess I didn't even notice.
Yeah, I mean,
say, wow.
Yeah, what's the big knife about?
Okay, now again, a convergence. What you're going to find is it first starts with animals, and before you know it, these animals are taking more and more of a human shape. Here is something very common. Right. So again, we're now getting into anime, but you will find that there is a convergence of this kind of thing. Look at the little animal stripes. Okay.
Yeah.
Parents, this is what your child is going to encounter if they get into furries, because guess who's waiting in the wings for furries? I'm going to back out of that one more time. Sorry for the shifting. I'm not all that tech savvy. And here is the degree of deviance. And this is nothing, folks. So what else do we have? This is what your child is going to be exposed to. This is just this is just the beginning. Okay, these were just
hold on. I got to jump in here, guys. This is what your child's already been exposed to.
That's
Don't think your kids haven't looked at this, anyone out there, because your kids have seen this, whether they're 7, 12, or 20. It doesn't matter.
That's right. And that's what parents need to understand. What I want to do right now, Paul, let me see if I have it loaded up. I should have it. Okay, I'm going to keep looking. Sorry, I've got so much in the background here. Um, Parents need to understand this is nothing. And again, these were just on the pages of men that defend furries. Okay, I want people to know that I just got these screenshots. Now, we talked about Bones. Who is Bones?
This isn't like you've gone into Pornhub at all, is it, John?
Say it again.
This
sorry,
isn't like
Brett?
you've gone into Pornhub or any kind of a porn
this
website
is all
at
on
all.
Twitter.
This is just
These
guys putting this stuff on their Facebook pages.
Right? This is just all on Twitter. As a matter of fact, here's another one. Okay, I've collected screenshots just from Twitter, and I got banned multiple times on Twitter, but these perps haven't. Okay, there's a good example. There's a furry creature with a. Don't tell me a young kid isn't going to be sexualized by seeing this kind of stuff. I'm going to now get out of there. Now, as you saw before, we had somebody show up on my social media when I posted about the dangers of furries, and this person by the name of Bones said, "John, what's so bad about furries?" Okay, we're going to find who this Bones individual is. This is a reemergence of Bones because Bones had to take a little hiatus because Bones let the cat out of the bag a little too much. This is a reemergence, and I want to read through this because I'm going to show you who Bones is. Bones is a zoophile. They go to furry convention. They're involved in furries. How do you know this is a zoophile, by the way, which is rebranding of bestiality. How do you know if someone's into bestiality if they've got a big costume on? Okay, so Bones up at the top says this. Bones is trying to, Bones was being shut down by furries because Bones was giving up the goods. And so they got down on Bones saying, shut your mouth, you're different than us. And Bones says, what? No, Bones is too honest. So Bones says, every single one of you is a non-practicing zoophile. So Bones is revealing that every single one of these furries, now, okay, we'll say maybe 3% aren't. Those are probably the women, by the way, based upon their own furry research. Bones goes on, replace the triple threat of being Black, queer, and non-binary. There's the convergence. So apparently Bones is, I don't know, maybe Black, queer, non-binary with the unholy trinity of what? Zoo or zoophile. Necro, that stands for dead, and sadism. And I could almost be tricked into thinking that I wrote this thread myself. So we have now the emergence of zoophilia, necromancy, and if you go on to anime furry deviant art, you're going to also start to see necrophilia. That's sex with dead bodies.
Right.
You have sadism. They're harming animals by raping them, and then they will have sex with their dead body. This is all part of the this group. Paul, talk to us a little bit. I'm gonna bring up a few more things now.
Well, I mean, the behaviors go on and on. I wrote in, I forget what chapter it was, but there was the incident of the furries who sold fur suits, but they were actually buying animals and skinning them and making the fur suits out of real fur. I document a couple. I talked to you a little earlier about the toxic atmosphere within furries. And let me tell you something, parents, if you're concerned about your children being bullied, for sure, keep them away from the furries. All right. There's more bullying that goes on within the furry community. The outside world can't hold a candle to it. So, documented murders that took place, So the behaviors go on and on. And, you know, the rules, as far as, you know, the rules as far as self-evident moral behavior is completely thrown out the window because according to furry ideology, that is just all dismissed. And that was, again, the very beginning of the furry movements and the voodoo publications, which one of their famous mantras was "No humans allowed." So it's just all of these things flow out of an anti-humanity movement.
And that's right. And the anonymity it affords, and therefore wherever a predator can hide, can embed, and especially decrease the risk of getting busted, they are all about that. We're back to bones now. Now, this was the first.
And let me interject something right there.
Yeah.
Mortals, mere mortals, you know what they actually have a name for them. I'll interject it later. I can't think of the name. There's actually a name for them, but well, I totally lost. Lost my train of thought. I'll pick up later.
Yeah, there's so much. We're trying to condense so much. Right. This is an 8-hour talk. Maybe we'll do a webinar. Right. I don't know if anybody would come to the webinar because it doesn't sound engaging, but it's so important to understand predator tactics. So there's a lot of different perspectives, and we're even going to show you that for some women, I would make the case that there's some very naive women that view this as a social gather, a time to get together with other women. I'm going to show you one who actually has made me enemy number one because I've spoken out against furries. I'm going to show you her Twitter page because she does a wonderful job unmasking pedophiles in the movement, but she hasn't made the case or the connection in her mind that, oh, maybe just a couple of pedophiles, no, those are the ones that have been busted. Maybe this makes it so it's not safe because how many pedophiles is enough? Okay, so here we have Bones. This is the first time Bones appeared, made that comment. John, what do you have against furries? I thought, who's this Bones person? I clicked on Bones's page, and this was the first time Bones. So Bones resurrected his or her account, but look at the description. So zoophilia and content down on the bottom. Well, look at the descriptor. Bones, he, him, okay. Right, so trans activist, or okay, animal, zoosexual, necrozoophile. These are really deviant people. Bones asked me online, what do I have against furries? Bones said to the rest of the furries, you know you are closet zoophiles. Okay, now down at the bottom. Oh, we have ethical zoodism or zoo sadism. Okay, that's harming animals, by the way. And then let's talk about zoophilia and consent. There's that word. Pedophiles love to talk about consent. Antis are quick, so anti having sex with animals, bestiality. Antis are quick to point out that animals can't give verbal consent, and that's obviously true. But how good actually is spoken language as a means of consent? And then look at all the stuff that Bones is into. I'm going to bring up another one. So based upon Bones saying, listen, this is 100% part of furries. The furries are trying to make Bones shut up. Bones has given up the goods. And so here's a screenshot of what we have for Bones. This was on Bones' first page, and you can tell why this, I'm going to enlarge this, why this did not make people happy. I don't know if I can enlarge the screen, so we'll just go for it. I'm going to read this. Okay, so this was Bones' kind of own manifesto. Ultimately, what this means is that it's possible, is that it is possible to rape an animal but that having sex with an animal is not necessarily rape. And it follows that the animals may give and withdraw consent, and they may consent to certain sexual activities and not to others. Okay, my dog, for example, enjoys being masturbated. I found this out when he got an erection while playing with me and responded positively to me touching it. Now, when he's horny, he'll rub his butt against me, cock his legs, and give me access to his sheath and hump my hand. Okay, it goes on. I have actually posted it. It gets worse. Okay, so we clearly have a very deranged and deviant individual. As a matter of fact, Bones went on to describe for me how it isn't as bad as it looks. As a matter of fact, I'm going to bring that up because I then started to comment because, Bones, unfortunately, in his or her deviance, and that's the tricky thing about these pronouns, you never know, right? But so I wanted to try to find out. So I did a little dramatic effect. This was actually before they got me banned on Twitter the first time. Okay, so Bones, I comment saying, Bones, are you aware this is illegal? This is not healthy interaction. And interesting, Bones had to respond, and so did a map, a minor attracted person. So Bones says, well, John, not every zoophile or pedophile is driven by lust for power and control. There's Bones' ignorance about. So the question is, how many hours of sex offender treatment has Bones conducted? Okay. We don't get off on deliberate causing psychological trauma. Some do, but they only represent a tiny fraction of us. Most would be abhorred by it and would not tolerate such people in our community. Now, here comes a pedophile. He says to me, he's spoken the truth. Most pedophiles, see the equating, most pedophiles do not harm, nor do they want to harm children. Interesting. There's that map convergence. So we have furries, zoophiles, pseudosadism, and now we have pedophiles and maps, and we have anime art all converging. And they look for what? The kids on the spectrum. Okay, so my response was this. Care to repeat that? Not every pedophile is driven by power and control. Seriously? In fact, it's even worse. So go ahead and spin the narrative of having special relationships and a special bond and special connections with kids as you are defiling their trust and innocence. You notice they both, zoophile, so bestiality, and those that are into harming kids, of violating kids. Why do you think this group will come unhinged? And when we publish this, they're going to come unhinged. Where there's smoke, there's fire. If you were interested in the safety of children, you'd simply say this. You know what? All things being equal, we've realized that we kind of have some deviance going on in this group. Parents, it's not safe. Just wait until your child is 18. Seems kind of reasonable. But no, that's not going to suffice for them. Why? Because they are hell-bent in ensuring they have access to kids.
Right.
And I'm going to bring up a recording now, but Paul, any thoughts?
Well, I would just say the kind of things that you were outlining, we got to understand, was going on in the very first conferences. Okay. And so the few people that I would call the naive minority of the so-called furry fandom, they wrote a letter to one of the founders, Mark Merlino, that I got a hold of, complaining about what was going on in the first conferences. Now, I alluded earlier to what is known in the fandom is normal thinking people, or what they deem to be culturally normal or whatever. The name within the furry fandom for normal people is the mundanes. Okay, they're called the mundanes. there were deliberate behaviors in the very first conferences to drive out the so-called mundanes. In other words, and I document this, and this is the chapter 3, and excerpts from letters of complaint sent to Mark Merlino, who was one of the founders at the time starting the conferences. They didn't want mundanes there. What are mundanes? Well, mundanes are normal thinking people who were truly there for the art.
Or just want to play dress up.
Right.
You know.
They were actively driven out. They weren't wanted. They were mundanes. Okay?
That's right. They kind of throw cold water on this. Paul, and again, I'm going to recommend people get your book, Fake Fandom. Right. Where can they get your book? Because I'm going to play an excerpt from a guy that couldn't take it any longer and left the fandom, a fairly famous guy. Tell people where they can get your book, and then I'm going to play this clip.
Shopify. Go to shopify.com.
There you go. So there's Paul's book.
Yeah. And just like go on a search, do Fake Fandom Paul Dohse, it ought to come right up.
Okay. To show you that what Paul has revealed, that they've driven any quote unquote normal people out, there's still some hangers on. And I'm going to show you Canine Sentry Online, who has a love-hate relationship with me. So anyway, we're going to show now, this is somebody who unmasked, and it's very inconvenient because the furries hate that the guy gave up the goods. So we're going to go into, and mind you, this is going to be, it has some foul language, but you know what? It's raw. Here we go.
If something makes you miserable, at some point you just have to stop doing it. So let this video serve as my resignation from the furry community. I could end the video right here, but undoubtedly people want to know my reasons why. So let me tell you just how awful the furry community actually is. I'm not the kind of person who usually calls people degenerates or cares about society's moral expectations. I'm pretty deep into the furry sexuality stuff myself, but even I know that you probably shouldn't fuck animals, and you definitely shouldn't fuck kids. But there is a sizable chunk of the furry community who do at least one of these things. When I first joined the community about 15 years ago, I was 14 years old. Almost immediately upon entering the community, I was tempted into online sexual encounters by older men. They do things like roleplay cuddling to groom me into getting used to increasingly sexual situations. At the time, I wasn't bisexual and had no interest in men, so they'd use furry female characters as their avatars so I'd have less of a problem with it. This would change over time as they introduced me to their other characters. It would start with sexual roleplay with their characters, but eventually led to talk about sex in real life, culminating in wanting to meet up for real-life sex. I was always smart enough to tell them no, which usually led to an argument, anger, and the ending of the friendship. This didn't happen just once. This happened numerous times over the years to me, between the ages of 14 and 17. Of course, I was just a horny kid without the knowledge or life experience to know what was going on, so I never reported any of those people, and it's been too long for me to remember their names at this point. The kicker here is that I fully believe that most of the people who were and are still involved in this are too delusional to actually realize what they are doing, or that there's anything wrong with it. If you are underage in the furry community, it is almost a certainty that you will be approached by someone who will try to prey on you. They are smarter than you, and they will use your emotions against you. They will lie about their age and gender, and you won't know. I've seen people try to downplay the amount of pedophiles in the furry community, but they fail to realize one thing. The furry community is a gathering place for horny teens who just want to be your slave, uwu. If you don't think actual practicing pedophiles flock to the furry community, you are a fucking moron. But let's move on to everyone's favorite topic.
Okay. It's from the horse's mouth. Now, they quickly, what I received when I posted that, and that is online, people can access that, is, well, that guy, no, he changed his tune. Easy for him to say he used to promote pedophilia. Now, what I've seen from little screenshots is he just said, listen, if they're talking about it and they say they need to get help, maybe they're not acting that out. I don't agree with that, but you could tell he wasn't promoting pedophilia, but he had had enough of it, so he came out. Paul, this stuff runs so deep in that community, and that's why parents need to be concerned. And as you're going to kind of begin to help us wrap things up, I'm going to then bring up a site on Twitter that I recommend, even though, bless her heart, I think Canine Century is a female. I'm public enemy number one to her because I have spoken out against. Well, you're probably public enemy number one. I'm public enemy number two. But she has a list after list of pedophiles that have been busted that are within the community.
I have a chapter that goes into that. I think a congressman was even had to resign because
well, if it's not Barney Frank in the men's room with a page, it would be, these guys, hiding their identity, these congressmen.
So I'll kind of wrap up with interesting to note that in the initial conferences, they had slave auctions, which is rather politically incorrect. But in this letter, I go on prefacing it. He goes on to indict Mark Merlino for driving out the old regular attendees. But immediately afterward, he talked about the experience of what had come to be known as pet auctions and suggested he was allowing prostitution. G. Mark, quoting from the letter to Mark Merlino, G. Mark, innocent, naive us, we thought it was going to be a pet auction, as in people in costumes and anthropomorphically inclined, adopting others of similar interest for the benefit of charity. We found it was nothing more than a queer auction, quoting the letter. Kashima offered to do a lap dance on Toshida, her zebra dancer, went to the highest bidder. If she was offering this to a furry audience, she probably would have brought the house down instead. She got crickets. Know what this means, Mark. She went for $28, and yet some little cretin in tight black shorts offering veiled sex went for $180. In fact, all of these offering, quote, extras at the discretion of the pet. All right, so this was one of the things in the auction. If you buy me, I'm offering, quote, extras at the discretion of the pet. Okay.
There you go.
Sold for over $40. Mark, all of this came off as a thinly disguised excuse for pandering. You're lucky it wasn't shut down. He's speaking of the police. These are the very first conferences, that took place. So,
well, let me, for parents, they can do their own research. I'm now going to show this very interesting page, if I can find it here, where it's on Twitter, and it's Canine Century. Now, what's interesting is if I scroll up, you're going to find 87 posts about me. Canine has a hate on for John Euler. And Canine, if you keep going, if you want to find a whole lot, so here we have John Euler again. Here we have John Euler again. So we got 87 of these. Why? Because what do I post? I say to a furry that was interacting with me, are you seriously so uncultured as to, Canine, okay. So you see her up there. My response was, now, somebody took a picture of two furries in a ballroom. Let me see if I can increase the size of this pager. There we are. Okay, so what you have, this was actually posted on a furry page. They were very proud of this. So I kind of did a link to a link to a link, and lo and behold, they're very proud of this. This came from a recent FurCon, I think last year. Okay, so they're posting this. What's happening in this picture? I'm going to increase it one more. Now this is, they're posting this themselves. Well, as a matter of fact, I'll increase it one more. So this is what furries are proud of. Let me ask you this. Are they by themselves, or do you see anybody in the background? They're the furries. How big of a ballroom is this? You could tell they finished. They're either waiting to begin, but a lot of people here. This is out in the open. What do we have our guy on the right? What's he have in his right hand? That's right. What is that? I'll increase it even more there. Okay. Can anybody see that? That looks like a fake penis. So what is the mule there? Looks like from Pinocchio. What is he holding? It's a little bit hard here. If it was clear, you'd see he's holding a ball. Not sure the meaning of that, but it's dripping with silly string that is to be semen. So out in the open, in this audience. Now, is anybody else in the audience paying attention to these two guys? No, because this is such common fare that nobody even had an issue that you have two adults that are pretending to experience a public masturbatory event. Okay. Right. My contention is this. If your audience isn't shocked, you should have everybody behind them looking like, what a bunch of freaks. What are you doing? And if they do this out in the open, so aside from what, and if you keep scrolling, because canine, my assumption is this, canine's a female, and this is her social experience. Well, bless her heart, even though she hates me and she's reported my professional license, I'm trying to help her I don't really write towards her, but what's interesting, I'm going to give her credit. So I hope people go to her page. She'll probably have an apoplectic fit that John Euler's announcing, promoting her page, but she does a very nice job looking at what? She reveals person after person. That's actually where I got this screenshot from. These are all people that were a part of furries that have been arrested. So I recommend go to her page. I'm going to let a furry show you how dangerous furries are. Okay, so she keeps track of these, but she thinks that somehow this is how she's going to clean up the furry fandom. But I hate to tell her that she doesn't understand male deviance. If you keep going, she's got, to her credit, she's got list after list. She's gone criminal. See, we got more. So spend time on Canine Sentry. She's probably going to roll over in her grave and she's not dead yet, knowing that John Euler has actually promoted her page because it's a good source of information. Sadly for her and the few that are involved in this that might be quote unquote legitimate, I first would challenge them. You know what? Don't you have anything other to do with your time? There are people that actually could use your help as far as helping to clean up streets or build people's homes or do actual good things. But no, they're stuck. They're doing these conventions and they're covering up for very deviant individuals some of whom are pedophiles.
So she's trying to reform the movement. And I have a whole chapter in my book about the burned furs attempted reformation. Here's the question. How are you going to reform a movement that was born out of, their very first conferences were founded on deviance. So this is a movement founded on deviance. Okay, there's no way to reform it. Deviance is its very foundation. Its very foundation is the rejection of all cultural norms.
Okay? And that's where pedophiles flock.
Right.
It's easy hunting because parents are handing kids over and kids, they find these kids online and it looks fun. In the city of Pittsburgh, out comes the furry parade. It's lined with parents and kids.
Right. And of course, a lot of it's about the money. The city leaders, they know about the movement, they know what's going on. But look at the money that's being brought to that community.
Yeah, millions
through the
and millions of dollars.
movement.
And who knows how many people in positions of power are pedophiles that love going to these things because they are covered, so to speak. Paul Dohse, you've written the book on this. I highly recommend people, again, get a hold of your book, The Fake Fandom, the Furrie Fandom Sect. You were good enough to ask me to write the foreword for that. And Brad, this is a topic that, who would believe it? But when you start to peel back away the layers, you find that this is a cesspool of individuals that are into bestiality and child pornography and child looking for kids.
So we're going to have to do another episode, guys, because what we didn't delve into today, we've delved into the deviants, we've delved into what the movement is all about, the ideology, we've gotten into how they act, what they wear, how they conduct themselves, how they treat children, for that matter. I have to ask, and I honestly, as a parent and a dad, I really don't know. There's a deviancy to this, no question about that, but is this a mental health issue?
Mm-hmm. Yes. If you read the if you read the 4 studies that I dissect in chapter 6, by at least one respected researcher, it is considered a mental illness, and the actual tag for it escapes me, but yes, it's considered, the ideology is, yes, considered a mental illness.
Yeah, and Paul, if you'd be good enough, let's have you come back, because as a mental health professional and a sex offender treatment provider, what'll be very interesting is I'm going to tell people this is absolutely not a mental illness. So it'll be a very interesting discussion, a very important one, because it matters on both fronts. So, Paul, would you be willing to come back? People, we still have just scratched the surface of this very dangerous thing that kids should not be involved in. For under the age of 18, parents, keep your kids away.
Hey, guys, adults shouldn't be involved in this. What's wrong with you? Get off your pets immediately. Stop it. And I don't mean that like the pun that was there. Get away. You don't even deserve a fucking pet, asshole. With that, I'm going to leave it right there. That's it. I heard F-bombs today. I've heard A-bombs today. I might as well join the club today, too, for that matter. This is sick, disturbing, twisted shit.
It is.
And I don't know how else to describe it. These people need mental help. They need to be locked up as well, in my opinion, because they're committing crimes. There's fraud. There's intimidation. There's coercion. There's extortion. And then there's the sexual aspect of the rape and the sodomy that's going on. Just disgusting. And you're trying to include a 5 or 7-year-old into this. I'm not going to say what I want to say today. That's it. This is Unmasking the Trans Movement. This is exactly why we do what we do every single day here on the show. We welcome you to join, become a member. You'll learn so much more within our membership pages. You'll be able to experience videos that you never thought. And we're not talking about pornographic videos. We're talking about videos that are going to help you really get into the conversation with your own kids, your own grandkids. And as an adult, you'll be able to have that conversation directly with your spouse as well, whether it's a man or a woman, or if it's a trans individual. I'm going to say it, we all need help this day and age. Thank you for watching. You'll find us on BitChute with all of our episodes there, absolutely free. You can like, share, subscribe, and don't forget to comment. I know the furries are going to be commenting after this episode. As well, you can find us on unmaskingthetransmovement.com, where our membership and all the information that parents need to help them is there. thank you very much to both of you. Paul Dohse, thank you very much. We look forward to having you back on the show. John, always a pleasure having you on the program as well. I'm Brad Wilder. Until next time, remember, it's not our kids' fight, it's our fight.